I came home early that evening, something I rarely did. Not because I didn't want to, but because Emily always had some excuse. Girls' night, work dinner, gym session ran late, it was never ending. Today, though, I had finished early, and for the first time in months, I thought it would be nice to surprise my wife. I even picked up her favorite sushi on the way home, thinking maybe we could have a quiet night together. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew something was off. It was too quiet. Normally, the TV would be on, or I'd hear Emily humming some pop song in the kitchen. Instead, silence. Then, faintly, I heard a voice. Muffled, low, definitely not hers. My stomach tightened. I wasn't the paranoid type, but something about the way the sound carried through the house set off alarms in my head. I placed the sushi on the counter and followed the noise. As I approached our bedroom, the voices became clearer, hers and another man's. My breath caught. I stopped, my body frozen between fight and flight. My mind raced, grasping for an explanation. Maybe she was on the phone, maybe it was the TV, but as I took another step, I heard it. Laughter. Intimate. Playful. Hers and his, blending together in a way that made my stomach turn. My heart pounded so loudly I thought they'd hear it. I reached for the doorknob, hesitated for just a second, then pushed the door open. And there she was, Emily, in our bed, with some guy. She screamed when she saw me, scrambling to pull the sheets over herself. The guy, some smug-looking jerk with messy hair, just sat there, half-covered, staring at me like I was the intruder. For a moment, the room felt like it had been drained of air. My vision narrowed, the edges of my sight blurring as anger, shock, and disgust crashed over me all at once. Daniel. Emily started, her voice high-pitched, panicked. But I wasn't interested in hearing whatever pathetic excuse she was about to come up with. I turned on my heel and walked out. My ears rang with the sound of her voice calling my name, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my keys and left. I don't remember driving. One moment I was stepping out of that house, my home, and the next I was parked somewhere unfamiliar, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. The world outside was a blur, streetlights, passing cars, faceless people walking by. Everything moved, but I felt frozen. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. My breath came in short, uneven bursts. I could still see them, Emily's wide, guilty eyes, the stranger's blank, unapologetic expression. The sheets twisted around them like some pathetic attempt to hide the truth. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel, the sharp sting barely registering. How long? How long had she been doing this? How many times had I been the idiot bringing her flowers, picking up dinner, texting her I love you while she was with someone else? My phone buzzed. I didn't have to look to know it was her. I picked it up, stared at the screen. Emily. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Then it stopped. A second later, a message popped up. Daniel, please? Please come back. Let's talk. Talk? Talk? What was there to talk about? I saw everything. I saw enough. Another message. It's not what you think. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Classic. That was straight out of some terrible movie script. Not what I think. I literally caught her in bed with another man. How could she even say that with a straight face? The phone rang again. I answered this time, but I didn't say a word. I just listened. Daniel? Please, just listen, okay? Her voice was shaky, like she was crying. Like she was the victim here. Silence. I waited. I screwed up, she admitted. I did. But it wasn't like I didn't mean to hurt you. I exhaled slowly, pressing my forehead against the steering wheel. She didn't mean to hurt me. What a joke. You didn't mean to hurt me? My voice was so calm. It scared me. Emily, do you think I'm stupid? Of course not. No, Daniel, please, she sniffled. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I closed my eyes. A mistake. That word made my skin crawl. A mistake was forgetting an anniversary. A mistake was spilling coffee on important paperwork. Sleeping with another man in our bed? That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. Who is he? I finally asked. Silence. I opened my eyes. Emily. Who is he? More silence. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. It doesn't matter. I laughed. This time, a real laugh. Bitter. Angry. It doesn't matter? Are you serious? Daniel, I don't want to make this worse. Worse? Worse than what, Emily? Worse than walking into my own bedroom and seeing my wife in bed with some random guy? My voice rose now, shaking with rage. Worse than you lying to my face for God knows how long? She sobbed. I love you. Okay? I don't want to lose you. I stared out the windshield, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. She loved me. Right? That's why she was sleeping with someone else. That's why she let me kiss her goodbye in the mornings, knowing she was doing this behind my back. I couldn't listen to another word. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. I sat there, breathing in and out, my mind replaying everything. Then, I put the car in drive and left. I drove without a destination, my mind running in circles, replaying everything over and over again like a broken record. The way she looked at me when I walked in. The way she clutched the sheets like that could somehow erase what I saw. The way the guy, whoever the hell he was, didn't even flinch. I should have said more. I should have stayed and demanded answers. I should have ripped the whole damn house apart, made them feel even an ounce of the rage boiling inside me. But instead, I walked out. And now? Now I was just lost. Eventually, I found myself in an empty parking lot outside a 24-hour diner. The neon sign buzzed, flickering slightly, casting a dull glow onto the wet pavement. It had rained at some point, though I couldn't remember when. I got out of the car, my body moving on autopilot. The bell above the diner door jingled as I stepped inside. The place was nearly deserted. Just a tired-looking waitress wiping down the counter and an old man nursing a cup of coffee in the corner. I slid into a booth by the window, not because I wanted to look outside, but because it was the farthest I could be from the world at that moment. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a kind face, came over with a notepad. "What can I get you, hon?" I hesitated. Food was the last thing on my mind. But I needed something to do, something to ground me. "Coffee. Black." She nodded and walked away. I stared down at my hands. They were shaking. I hadn't even realized. I clenched them into fists, trying to steady myself, but the tremors didn't stop. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was exhaustion. Betrayal. The crushing weight of reality settling in. My wife cheated on me. My wife. I always thought if something like this ever happened, I'd see the signs. I'd notice the distance, the excuses, the sudden secrecy. But I hadn't. Or maybe I had, and I just didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe we were solid, that whatever rough patches we hit were just that, patches. Temporary. Fixable. But this? There was no fixing this. The waitress came back with my coffee, setting it down gently. "You okay, sweetheart?" I forced a tight smile. "Yeah. Just a long day." She gave me a look like she didn't believe me but didn't push. "Well, if you need anything, just holler." I nodded and wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, letting the warmth seep into my skin. My phone was still off, but I had the overwhelming urge to turn it back on. To see if she'd kept calling. To see if she had more excuses, more meaningless apologies waiting for me. I took a deep breath and powered it on. The screen lit up with missed calls. "Emily, 13 missed calls. 13. And texts. Dozens of them. "Daniel, please answer. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I need you to talk to me. It was a mistake. Please don't let this ruin us. I love you. I don't know what to do if you don't come back." I scrolled through them, my jaw tightening with every word. Then one message stood out from the rest. "Please don't do anything stupid." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. That was rich? I'm the one who shouldn't do anything stupid? She was the one who destroyed everything. She was the one who let some guy into her home, into her bed. And now suddenly she was worried about me? I put the phone down and took a slow sip of coffee, trying to collect myself. But the anger wouldn't fade. Instead, it twisted into something colder. I wasn't going to answer her. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. She didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve me. I sat in that diner for what felt like hours, letting the coffee go cold, staring out the window at nothing in particular. My mind was a battlefield, rage, betrayal, confusion, grief, all fighting for control. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to march back into that house and make her look me in the eyes while I demanded every ugly, disgusting detail she'd been hiding. But I wouldn't. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing how deeply she had broken me. She didn't deserve that power. Instead, I paid my bill, nodded at the waitress, and walked back to my car. I hesitated before getting in, pulling my phone out again. 13 missed calls. I had expected more. For a moment, I hovered over her name, debating whether to call her back just to see if she had another lie prepared, another desperate attempt to manipulate the situation. I didn't. Instead, I called someone else. "Hey, man. Everything okay?" The voice on the other end was groggy, thick with sleep. Took me a second to realize how late it was. "Matt," I said, swallowing hard. "I need a place to crash." That woke him up fast. "What happened?" I clenched my jaw. "I'll tell you when I get there." A pause. Then, without hesitation, yeah, of course. Doors open. I didn't thank him. I couldn't get the words out. Instead, I hung up, got in the car, and drove. Matt lived about 20 minutes away, in an apartment that was always messy but somehow felt more like home than the place I had just left. When I arrived, he was already waiting at the door, dressed in sweatpants and an old band t-shirt, his brow furrowed in concern. "Dude," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "You look like hell." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, that sounds about right." He shut the door behind me, watching as I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto his couch, my body sinking into the worn cushions. "All right," he said, sitting across from me. "What the hell happened?" I ran a hand over my face, trying to find the words. It still didn't feel real. Saying it out loud would make it real. Matt waited, his expression unreadable. He had been my best friend since college. We had seen each other through breakups, job losses, family drama, but this was different. This was something I never thought I'd have to say. I took a breath. "Emily cheated on me." The words tasted bitter. Matt's face twisted, his jaw tightening. "No." I nodded. "Are you?" He stopped himself, shaking his head. "Of course you're sure." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah." Walked in on them. In our bed. Matt swore under his breath. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Jesus, man." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. For a long time, we just sat there. The only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside. Then Matt let out a slow breath and rubbed his face. "What are you gonna do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I had spent the last few hours running away, avoiding the situation, letting the shock and anger guide me. But now, sitting in my best friend's apartment, reality was setting in. My marriage was over. I exhaled slowly, staring at the floor. "I don't know." Matt nodded like he understood. "Maybe he did." "You staying here tonight?" he asked after a moment. "Yeah. If that's okay." "Of course, man. Stay as long as you need." I nodded, the weight of everything finally settling onto my shoulders. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know what I would do or say or even feel when the sun came up. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going back. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on Matt's couch, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through everything again and again like some sick, torturous loop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. I saw them. I saw the way her face twisted in shock when I walked in, the way she scrambled for the sheets, as if covering herself would somehow make it better. As if I hadn't already seen everything. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Matt moving around in the kitchen. My body felt heavy, my head pounding from exhaustion and stress. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face. Matt glanced over from where he was pouring coffee. "Morning." "Morning," I muttered. My voice felt like sandpaper. "Didn't sleep much, huh?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah. No." He handed me a mug, then sat across from me, watching carefully. He looked like he wanted to say something, but for once, Matt, who never shut up, was at a loss for words. Finally, he sighed. "So, what now?" I stared down at my coffee. I had asked myself the same question all night. What now? I should go back. Get my stuff. Figure out the next steps. But the thought of walking into that house again made my skin crawl. It wasn't home anymore. Not after what had happened there. I don't know, I admitted. But I can't just sit here forever. Matt nodded. "You want me to come with you? When you go back?" The offer surprised me, but I shook my head. "No, I need to do this myself." "All right, but if she tries anything, calls you with some sob story, don't let her pull you back in. She chose this man. Don't forget that." I couldn't. I waited until late afternoon before driving back. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to talk to her. I just wanted to grab my things and leave. But the moment I pulled into the driveway, my stomach twisted. The house looked the same, our house, but it felt different. Tainted. I had spent years building a life with Emily inside those walls. And in one night, it had all crumbled. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. I wasn't even halfway to the front door when it swung open. Emily stood there, her face pale, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked awful, like she hadn't slept either. For a brief second, something inside me stirred, some old instinct to comfort her, to fix things. But then I remembered. I remembered why she was crying. She took a step toward me. "Daniel, don't." My voice came out colder than I expected. "I'm not here to talk. I'm here for my stuff." She flinched, but she didn't move out of the way. "Please," she whispered. Just give me a chance to explain." I clenched my jaw. "Explain what, Emily?" What exactly could you say that would make this better? Her lower lip trembled. It wasn't she stopped herself, shook her head. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. Well, congratulations. You did. Silence. Then, softer, more desperate, I love you. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to meet her eyes. No, Emily. You don't. Her breath hitched. Yes, I do. Then why did you do it? I asked, my voice calm. Too calm. Why did you choose to throw everything away? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because she had no excuse. No real one, anyway. Finally, she whispered, I made a mistake. I shook my head. No, Emily. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is saying something stupid in an argument. This, I gestured around to the house, to us, wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Daniel, I don't want to lose you. You already did. Her shoulders shook with quiet sobs, but I didn't feel anything anymore. The anger was still there, simmering under the surface, but the pain? The love? It was gone. She had killed it. I stepped past her into the house. Her house now. I wouldn't live here anymore. And I wouldn't look back. I moved through the house like a ghost, barely registering the space around me. Everything looked the same, but it felt completely different, like walking through the ruins of a place that used to matter. The framed photos on the wall? Meaningless now. The couch where we'd curled up to watch movies? Just another piece of furniture. The kitchen table where we used to have coffee in the mornings? A reminder of a life that no longer existed. Emily trailed behind me, sniffling quietly, but I ignored her. I wasn't here to comfort her. I wasn't here to listen to her try and rewrite what had happened. I was here to leave. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started stuffing it with clothes, shoes, anything that was mine. I didn't need much. I just needed to get out. Daniel, Emily whispered from the doorway. I didn't respond. I know you don't want to hear it, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I stopped folding a shirt and exhaled through my nose, gripping the fabric so tightly my fingers ached. I turned to look at her, and for the first time since I walked through that door, I let myself really see her. She was a mess. Hair tangled, makeup smudged, her oversized sweater hanging loosely on her frame. She looked small, fragile, pathetic. And for the first time, I felt nothing. Emily, I said, my voice tired. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. She swallowed, blinking rapidly. I was lonely, she whispered. I scoffed. Lonely? She nodded quickly, like she wanted me to believe it. You were always working late, always stressed. I felt like we were losing each other. So your solution was to screw someone else? My voice rose, the anger breaking through again. You didn't talk to me. You didn't try. You just gave up. She flinched but didn't argue. I shook my head, shoving more clothes into my bag. You could have told me you were unhappy. We could have worked on it. But you didn't. You just lied. Over and over. It wasn't like that, she whispered. I let out a humorless laugh. Emily, I walked into our bedroom and saw you with another man. How else was it supposed to look? She had no answer for that. Silence stretched between us. The only sound was the rustling of fabric as I packed. Finally, she tried again. Where are you going to stay? I didn't look at her. Matt's. Her face twisted like she wanted to protest. I could see it in her eyes. She hated Matt. She always said he was a bad influence, that he didn't take life seriously, that he made me reckless. But right now, Matt was the only person I trusted. She took a shaky breath. Are you coming back? I zipped up the duffel bag and slung it over my shoulder. Then, finally, I turned to face her. No, I said simply. Her breath caught. I walked past her, down the hallway toward the front door. Every step felt heavier than the last, but I didn't stop. I wouldn't stop. Daniel, please? I paused at the door, gripping the handle. Then, without turning around, I said the last words I would ever say in her home. You made your choice, Emily. Now I'm making mine. And I walked out. I didn't look back. Not once. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove. My hands gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. But I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't on the verge of breaking down. I felt clear, like the fog had lifted, and I was finally seeing things for what they were. She had begged. She had cried. She had tried to make me believe there was a way forward. But there wasn't. Not for us. I pulled into Matt's apartment complex, parked, and sat there for a moment, staring at the cracked asphalt beneath the streetlights. My mind should have been racing, but instead, it felt eerily quiet. No more what-ifs. No more maybes. Just done. I grabbed my bag and headed upstairs. The door opened before I even knocked. Matt took one look at me, then stepped aside. Come in. I walked past him, dropping my bag by the couch. The apartment smelled like takeout and old beer, but at least it didn't smell like her. Matt shut the door and turned to face me. So, that's it? That's it, I confirmed. He let out a low whistle, running a hand through his hair. Damn. I sat down on the couch, elbows resting on my knees. The exhaustion was hitting now, settling deep in my bones. I hadn't just left a house. I had left a life. Every plan, every future moment I thought we'd have, gone in an instant. Matt sat down across from me, leaning forward. You sure about this? I gave him a look. Do I look unsure? He smirked. No, you look like you aged 10 years overnight. I let out a dry chuckle, shaking my head. Feels like it. A beat of silence passed before he spoke again, voice quieter this time. I know I told you to leave her, man, and I meant it. But I also know this isn't easy. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. It's not, but staying would be worse. He nodded like he had expected that answer. Then, without another word, he got up, grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed me one. I raised an eyebrow. Day drinking? He shrugged. You just walked out on your cheating wife. You earned it. Fair enough. I twisted off the cap and took a long drink. The bitterness sat heavy on my tongue, but I welcomed it. It was something real. Something solid. So, Matt said, settling back into his chair. What's the plan? I stared at the floor for a moment, considering. First, a lawyer. His lips curled into an approving smirk. Smart. Then, I don't know. I leaned back against the couch. Figure out where I'm gonna live. Move on. Matt snorted. Move on? That fast? I gave him a flat look. You think I'm gonna sit around mourning her? He held up his hands in mock surrender. Just saying. Might take time. I took another sip of beer, rolling the bottle between my fingers. She made her choice. I'm making mine. Matt studied me for a second, then nodded. Good. Because she doesn't deserve a second chance. A sharp knock on the door made us both freeze. Matt shot me a look, then stood up, walking over to check the peephole. The second he saw who it was, he groaned. You've got to be kidding me. I didn't have to ask. I already knew. Emily. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Of course she came. Of course she couldn't just let me leave in peace. Matt turned back to me. What do you want to do? I opened my eyes, my grip tightening around the bottle. Then, after a long moment, I set it down, stood up, and walked to the door. Time to finish this. The days blurred together after that. Time moved strangely, some moments dragging on painfully, others vanishing before I could process them. I stayed at Matt's place, crashing on his couch, avoiding my phone, and trying to pretend that none of this was happening. But it was happening. Emily hadn't stopped texting. If anything, she was getting worse. The messages started off desperate. Please talk to me. I made a mistake. I need you, Daniel. But when I didn't respond, they changed. She got angry. You're just going to throw everything away? I can't believe you're acting like this. You're being so immature. We're married. You can't just ignore me. Oh, but I could. And then, just when I thought she'd finally given up, a new message came through that made my blood run cold. We need to talk. I have something to tell you. I stared at my phone for a long time, my stomach twisted into knots. It was vague, just cryptic enough to get under my skin. I told myself I didn't care. Whatever she had to say, it didn't matter. But the thought lingered. Matt noticed. You look like you're thinking about doing something stupid, he said, tossing me a beer from the fridge. Let me guess. Emily's still blowing up your phone? I didn't answer. I just showed him the message. He read it and let out a slow sigh. The classic. I have something to tell you, move. She's baiting you, dude. I know, I muttered. But what if? Matt groaned. No, what if? It's bull. She's playing mind games because she knows you're done with her. Don't fall for it. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But a part of me, the part that still felt like I deserved some kind of closure, whispered, what if it's important? What if it changes everything? I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking my phone, rereading the message, wondering if I should respond. By morning, I made my decision. I was going to see her. One last time. I told myself I wasn't going to stay long. Get in, hear whatever she had to say, then leave. Simple. Clean. No emotions. But the moment I stepped inside our old house, I felt it, the weight of everything. The memories. The life I thought I had. The trust she had shattered. Emily was waiting for me in the living room, sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together. She looked nervous. Like she wasn't sure how this was going to go. Daniel, she breathed, standing up as if she wanted to run to me. I held up a hand. Just say whatever it is you need to say, I said flatly. Her face crumbled a little, but she nodded. Okay. She took a deep breath. I need you to know that it wasn't just some meaningless thing. I scoffed. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, I mean, she hesitated. I mean, it wasn't just once. My breath caught. Everything inside me froze. What? Her lip trembled. It wasn't just that one time. It had been going on for a while. I blinked. My brain refused to process it at first. A while? You mean, I said slowly, my voice eerily calm, that you've been sleeping with him for months and you let me believe it was a mistake? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know how to tell you, you didn't tell me, I snapped. You let me find out. You let me walk in and see it with my own eyes. She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. I didn't want to hurt you, she choked out. I laughed, but it was hollow. Then what the hell do you call this, Emily? She couldn't answer. She just shook her head, crying like she was the one who had been betrayed. I had been prepared to hear a lie, a half-truth. Another desperate attempt to salvage something that was already dead. But this was worse, because it meant she had never planned on stopping. If I hadn't walked in that night, she would have kept lying, kept sneaking around, kept coming home to me like nothing was wrong. And I had been so stupid. Daniel, please, she begged. I know I don't deserve another chance, but you're right, I cut her off. You don't. She flinched. I came here to hear you out. I continued, my voice quiet but firm. And now I have. So we're done here. I turned to leave. Wait, she cried, reaching for me. Can't we just, I stepped back. Don't touch me. The look on her face was pure devastation. But I felt nothing. I walked to the door, gripping the handle, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. And then, just before I stepped out, I said, lose my number, Emily. And I left. For good. The moment I stepped outside, I felt like I could finally breathe. The weight of that house, of her, of everything she had done, it all stayed behind the door I had just shut. For weeks, I had been carrying around the wreckage of our marriage, letting it crush me under its weight. But now it was gone. I walked to my car without looking back. She didn't try to follow me this time. Maybe she finally understood there was nothing left to save. Maybe she was too busy crying into her hands, mourning the consequences of her own choices. I didn't care. I slid into the driver's seat and just sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, staring straight ahead. My heart was pounding, but not from anger. Not from grief. From relief. I had been afraid that seeing her again would mess with my head. That I'd let her words crawl under my skin, make me question everything, make me wonder if I could somehow still fix it. But instead, all she had done was prove what I already knew: she was never sorry. She was only sorry she got caught. I wasn't stupid. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. You don't just walk away from years of marriage without scars. There would be moments where it would hurt. Where I'd wake up and forget, just for a second, that my life had completely changed. Where I'd wonder if there had been a version of us that could have worked. But this wasn't that version. And that life? That marriage? It was over. I started the car and drove away without hesitation. Back at Matt's apartment, I dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto the couch, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Matt, who had been watching TV, muted it and raised an eyebrow. So? How'd it go? I closed my eyes for a moment, then exhaled. She admitted it wasn't just once. Matt sat up. Wait, so she lied again? Yep. Jesus Christ. He shook his head. So she actually thought she could trick you into coming back by downplaying it? I let out a humorless chuckle. Guess so. Matt scoffed. Unbelievable. And let me guess, she pulled the whole "I didn't want to hurt you" routine? Word for word. Classic. He leaned back against the couch. So, how do you feel? Like, really? I thought about it for a moment. Lighter. Matt smirked. That's what happens when you finally take out the trash. I huffed out a laugh. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. The pain, the betrayal, the rage, it was all still there, but it didn't control me anymore. You know, Matt said after a pause, I've got some whiskey in the kitchen. We could celebrate. I raised an eyebrow. Celebrate my wife cheating on me? No, dumbass. Celebrate you getting rid of her. He stood up, heading toward the kitchen. New beginnings, man. You're free. No more lies, no more bullshit. That's worth a drink. I thought about it for a second, then stood up. Screw it. Pour me one. Matt grinned. Now that's the spirit. I followed him into the kitchen, the weight of the past finally slipping from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. The next morning, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from having all the answers or knowing exactly what the future held. No, this was different. This was the kind of peace that came from knowing that the worst was behind me. Emily was gone. Not physically, she still existed, still had my number, still probably sat in that house waiting for me to break. But she was gone from my life. And that was all that mattered. I stretched, feeling the stiffness in my muscles from sleeping on Matt's couch for too long. It wasn't comfortable, but it was better than staying in that house, surrounded by memories that had been nothing but lies. The smell of coffee drifted in from the kitchen, and I dragged myself up, rubbing my face as I walked in. Matt was already up, scrolling through his phone while sipping from a mug. He glanced up when he saw me. Well, look who's finally awake, he said. Rough night? Not really, I admitted. Just different. Matt smirked. Different as in, holy crap, I finally cut off my cheating wife and now I can breathe a kind of different? I huffed out a laugh. Something like that. He pushed a second cup of coffee toward me. Good. You deserve to breathe, man. I took the coffee, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward, it was just calm. And then, because Matt couldn't help himself, he said, so, what's next? I leaned against the counter, staring into my coffee. That was the question, wasn't it? What was next? For weeks, my entire existence had been consumed by her. By what she had done, by the lies, by the anger. Every thought, every action had revolved around Emily. But now I had a blank slate. I could go anywhere. Do anything. Be whoever I wanted to be without worrying about what she thought, or if I was doing enough, or if she was secretly betraying me behind my back. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I'm actually excited to find out. Matt grinned. That's what I like to hear. I took a sip of coffee, letting the silence stretch between us again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't filled with regret or pain or resentment. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm. The kind that tells you the worst is over. I still had a long way to go. I knew that. There would be bad days. Days where I'd feel angry. Days where I'd wonder if things could have been different. Days where I'd be tempted to answer one of her texts just to tell her how much she had hurt me. But I wouldn't. Because I wasn't that guy anymore. I wasn't the guy who let Emily control his life. I wasn't the guy who begged for answers from someone who never deserved him in the first place. I was done. And that was the most freeing thing in the world.